I need some traction. You need some traction.
And welcome everyone to another edition of Traction Webinars. I'm your host today. My name is Vasil Azarov. I'm a founder of Growth Blazers. We're a brand new community for modern marketers and founders. And previously, I'm a founder of Growth Marketing Contents. This webinar is brought to you by both .ai, Launch Academy, and partners. And today, I'm excited to talk about one of my favorite topics, how to engage your audience in a virtual world through content. And joining me first, Zarina Stanik, Director of Events and Experiences for Ceros, which is a platform that empowers companies including Snapchat, United Airlines, NBC, Fast Company, and many others. Zarina, you have spent close to 10 years navigating through events world. Just before we get started, why don't you tell us a little bit how this journey prepared you for experiential content marketing role, which you are in today, and what specific skill set you developed that made you successful in this role?
Sure. Thanks, Vasil. Super excited to be here. As Vasil mentioned, I previously came from the world of in real life events. Obviously, over the past year, that has changed and really shifted and moved into the world of virtual events. And the way I always think about it is people come to events for two reasons, and that is to learn as well as to do networking with their peers and people that might help them in their career or just help them learn new things. When you move to virtual, the learning part was really easy to adapt to. The networking part was a little bit harder. So using some creative thinking and really adapting what we learned from in real life events and really trying to move that to virtual experiences.
Excellent. We'll talk about it in details today. A few housekeeping reminders for everyone who's joining right now. If you have a question, use the Q&A window to submit your question. We'll have two opportunities for Q&A. And this presentation is also being recorded and it will be featured on our Traction YouTube channel. With that, without further ado, Zarina, please take it away.
Today, we're going to chat through engaging your audience in a virtual world through content. We covered this a little bit. I'm Zarina Stanik, Director of Events and Community at Ceros. And later, we're going to have Bridget Esposito, who is VP of Creative at Prudential, join us as well and walk through some in real life experiences of what they've recently done. So we're gonna jump right in. I've been in the world of events for close to 10 years and I've been at Ceros for 7 years. For those of you that don't know, Ceros is a design platform that enables companies to create interactive, immersive experiences really easily. And most importantly, one of the best facts about me is this is my dog. She is also 10 years old, so she's been with me for this part of the journey. So the thing that we're going to chat through today is the 5 layers of engaging content. Content marketing is changing, and we're not just investing in content marketing, but we're investing in immersive digital storytelling, experiential content, and interactive content. There's a whole bunch of other buzzwords that could fit into this category, but these are the ones that I feel really relate to me recently. So how is content marketing changing, and what are these new buzzwords really doing? We really want to form a deeper emotional connection between the consumer and us, the brand or the creator. And we kind of tried to simplify it. We've seen a lot of different content experiences, and we've tried to break it down into 5 layers that you can really take and act and be actionable on. So the first layer is the narrative. This is the underlying copy, your script, your text, your data, and what your story is. So when you break down the narrative, what we first like to do is, what are you creating this content for? Who are you creating this content for? And what are the goals? Is it for awareness? Is it further down the funnel for evaluation? Or is it for the person in the final stages of decision making? Once you establish those goals, you can really start to shape your story and your message. And there's just easy little tips and tricks that you can do, like using relatable language and twists and conflict throughout your story. And then finally, like, resonate emotionally, just because we are all human. So I compare this to very similarly as to when I'm reading a fiction book. The story is compelling. I'm drawn in. I want to get to the end of the story. When you're creating content for your brand, you want to still do those same exact things. The next layer is the visual components. This is your visual framework of the story. It's your images, your photos, and any other visual components that really act as an aid to your narrative. The fact of the matter is 90% of information transmitted to the brain is visual. I could have told you that I have brown hair, but you probably wouldn't remember that unless you actually saw the fact that I have brown hair. Visuals really do help. And you can have that be like images or photos, but also you can have data-driven visuals. You can have charts, you can have stats. You can really, there's a wide variety of what you can do with numbers, which is my favorite thing to incorporate into content. But the last and final thing is not to forget design. Bad design kills your content. I know that a lot of the times we hear objections like from marketers that are saying like, our design team is super swamped, we don't have enough resources, we want to go around our design team. But the fact of the matter is that your design team knows what they're doing when they're creating visually compelling content. I know I can create this deck and I can try really, really hard, but our designer is going to be just that much better on it because she went to school for it and she has an eye for these things and some things that I will just never understand. Now, when it comes to copywriting or talking about marketing stuff, I'm probably going to be better at it than our head of design, but that's why making sure that the marketing team is working with the design team is always really important when creating these new types of engaging content. The next component is making sure that your content is integrated. There are a ton of third-party tools like maps, chat services, and a ton of other things. It's just really about knowing what's out there. Engagement matters when you're creating engaging content. And the longer that your customers engage, the more that they're going to trust you. So look, what I like to do actually is our company uses HubSpot. So I'll hop onto the HubSpot website once or twice a quarter and go through all of their recent integrations, because if their integrations are there, they're there to help you. And there's been a ton of requests for those tools and features. So seeing what's out there and what's already really readily available for you is super helpful. And then widgets sometimes can be really helpful. If there's a shortcut or easy tool that can really enhance your content, why not? And the other part of integrated content is making sure that your content is easily shareable on social. And then also video tools. Videos are great. Videos are fun. Videos really liven up your content. You can use it through creating video yourself, or you can use tools that really make your video experience that much better, like explainer videos. We use a tool called Wibbits, which looks like it has a ton of production value, but really it's stuff that we're creating in-house on our own within a couple of hours. The next thing we're going to chat about is making your content interactive. So interactive content is really any type of content that requires and encourages users to actively engage with rather than passively consume it. My least favorite example is something that we are all well too familiar with called the PDF. The PDF is no longer a relevant type of content. PDFs were meant to print out and read later and chat through it at home. When you're creating interactive content, you can create things like games, ebooks, quizzes, and you really can do a ton with that content. You can collect data. You are then able to analyze that data, see what worked well with your customers, what didn't work well with your customers. And then you can actually also take data in. So if you have stuff like forms, you're getting a ton of customer data. And human nature is just to kind of interact with things in real life. When you walk into a store and you're going to buy something, you want to touch the jacket, you want to see what it feels like. Taking that and bringing it to your content is going to make your buyer feel more connected with you. And then finally, work hard, play hard. It's a motto that most people live by, but making your content into games also is just like a fun way that you can interact with your consumer. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and walk through a couple of examples of ebooks, games, and quizzes. share screen. Okay, so this is an ebook that HubSpot had created. They had like a 12-page text-heavy PDF, and they just took the fun parts of that PDF and really made visual stats that you can play around with. You can exit out, you can go back and look at images and text and really consume content in a different way. So that's basically what we call the ebook 2.0. You're still gating this content. You can play around with how you do the gates. It doesn't have to be a gate right when you open it. It can be a gate maybe 15 seconds while you're on the page, or you can do it when if it's a long piece of content, you can do the gate halfway down. And this is something, just a gamified piece of content that one of our customers, Gum created. They are really great at taking content and making fun little experiences out of it. And they use things like maps, images, and you get to scroll through the car like this, but you're still playing around and retaining information. And then my final example is quizzes. So quizzes are a great tool to really have a two-way conversation with your consumer. And it's also a great way to easily collect data. And then that data can either serve to better have a conversation with your sales team, or you can serve them content that is more, feels more personalized to them. So that is interactive. We're gonna jump back into the deck. And after interactive, we have immersive. So immersive content really adds depth to visual content with triggered animations, sounds, and other dynamic layers. This again keeps your reader engaged there, and the longer you have your reader, the more likely you are to take them to the next step with you. And the way you can create immersive content is really upping the production value of your content, but also remembering that these people are on the web, they're also on their phones and their tablets. So making sure that if you're upping your production value, you want to make sure it's responsive. And different things you can do with, like, the reason I love sounds and animations and other layers is because it kind of really makes the person feel like they are in the experience with you, and it's not just that they're staring at a screen. So I'm going to, hopefully my audio is working. I'm going to share an example that we actually created, and this is our editorial arm of Ceros. So our editorial team creates these really fun experiences that on whatever relevant topics are. The purpose of this is to really just kind of inspire prospects or current customers and really just be part of our brand. So hopefully you can hear that. And this is just a timeline of recent, I'll pause the music, but you can kind of get like a sense of different emotion and like you're kind of somewhere else, not just in a Zoom meeting when that music starts to take over. And creating something like this is super, super easy. If you're not using the Ceros platform, there's tons of different apps out there that let you bring in music or video, different elements to really enhance your content. And we'll go back to the deck. So that's creating immersive content for engaging content. There's one more example that I would like to show you that I think really encompasses everything, and I'll wrap that up in a few seconds. But these are the takeaways, the 5 layers of creating engaging content. So these layers are really used to create an experience that you're looking to create with your audience. You're triggering specific actions or feelings for the person on the other end of the screen. So it's really not just a screen. It's more of like a two-way conversation, even though you're not really there in person. And you're really transforming static content into an experience. So again, PDFs really don't work anymore. You have to create content that stands out from your competitors. And I always try to say experimentation definitely works. Some things are not always going to work amazingly, but when you do find those 1 or 2 things that really click, the rewards are endless. And then when you're creating this content, focus on the customer journey. It should be an active two-way conversation. Test different things. Make sure the customer journey is still a positive experience. That's really what you want them to walk away with, no matter what stage of the content they are in. If it's awareness, if it's a decision-making process, you really just want to make sure that it's an active two-way conversation and a positive experience. I'm going to walk through one more example. And this is something that United Airlines created. With the world of digital, a lot of people don't have the way to really showcase their new products, whether it's B2B tech or B2C. But what they did is they created a really fun immersive experience that showed off their new airline. You can tell they use a great job with images. You can kind of feel like you're, oh, wow, I'm in the lounge with these people. I'm on the airplane. If you want to see what the food is like, you're able to click through there. And something like this really isn't that hard to create. They're just using a bunch of images and assets that they already have to really create a different type of experience. So that wraps up the 5 layers of engaging content. I would love to do a Q&A session right now and see if there's any questions, and then bring on Bridget Esposito, who heads up creative at Prudential, so she can walk you through what has been going on in their world.
Excellent. If you have a question for Zarina, please submit it using Q&A button. If we don't get to all of them right now, we'll have another opportunity to do Q&A at the very end of the presentation. While I'm looking at the questions, Zarina, we both come from events background, so I'm curious to hear your thoughts on making virtual events more engaging, which is a biggest challenge that all of the event organizers, brands are experiencing currently, specifically by using interactive content. Have you seen any good examples or implementations, or maybe some ideas?
Yeah, so there's so many platforms out there. One that I love is On24. We recently did an event with them where in the event, one of the ways that they used interactive content was having a little game as the breaks. So, and like I said before, we are all human. And if you gamify it and make it feel like a real person and it's not just all learning, I think that can easily make people feel more engaged with the content through a virtual event.
What kind of game was it?
It was a little tarot reading card.
Oh, very cool. So it was an immersive part of the experience. During the coffee break, they can play a game and then go back and watch the sessions, right?
Yeah, I think if you have the juxtaposition of content and the world of marketing or whatever the topic may be, and then something that is not necessarily about that, like something fun like tarot card or even yoga or meditation or a fun DJ. Also some creative ways that creative things I've seen is using Cameo in the middle of a conference and just having a fun celebrity break for 30 seconds. There's a ton of different ways to really liven up the event. And this stuff works in platforms that we're comfortable with, like Zoom. Obviously, and you also have to think of the customer journey through that way. Like, we're all very comfortable with Zoom. Is it worth getting on another platform that people might not be as comfortable with logging on, having their information there? Like, you really have to think of what the user experience is going to be like on the other end of the screen.
Yeah, it makes sense. When you were highlighting these examples, I had an idea of gamifying sort of an event agenda as a journey. So for attendees to explore. So it's not just a list of sessions, right?
Yeah.
That could be interesting. All right, Andrea is asking how do you overcome the challenge of digital advertising to an older population who may be averse to engagement tactics that may seem confusing? Maybe you have some thoughts on that?
I think you still have to just experiment with what works best. I know that when we're trying to resonate with a wider variety of customers, we really focus on data visualization. It's kind of like a cleaner, more engaging way of creating content that's still engaging and very consumable and digestible.
Excellent. Let's see okay, so we also have a question, which is, I'm assuming the answer would be similar. How do you usually handle different content strategy with different regions and cultures?
Okay, so that's actually a great question. That United Airlines example is something that they did with actually. So they create they create one experience and then they copy those experiences and adjust it to where that content is being served. So you're really not doing a ton of work for it. You're really just doing some text editing after that. But I do think making content accessible to a wider language or population is really, really important and doesn't take that much more work than you're already doing.
Excellent. And we'll take one last question for now from Stephanie, and we'll have the rest at the very end of the presentation. Can you tell us about your successes with virtual networking, and maybe if you can weave in how you implemented content engagement as a part of it?
Sure. So what we used to do in the real world is we had a user group meetup throughout the country about once a month. And our customers really loved coming together and networking geographically based. We took that same user group meetup and we did it once a quarter virtually. So we were always working on how can we get people to network, and sometimes networking online really isn't comfortable. Like if you just did breakout rooms right now and everyone was randomly put into 10 different rooms with 10 people they'd never met, it would be a little bit awkward. What we found is breaking people down into these like networking groups by something that they already had in common was really helpful. Also, I've found some really great motivational speakers that take people outside of their comfort zone, but it's like a guided process. So there's like prompts and questions where people are answering, and you don't feel like you're totally by yourself alone taking this, but it's like a guided networking process, which has been really helpful for prospects and customers.
Yeah, I love that idea. We tried both Zoom networking, and something, as you mentioned, didn't work out if you just awkwardly placed in the room with maybe 5 or 6 people without any prompt.
Yeah.
So I actually recently seen the platform around the world, and they introduced roundtables. And what they do, you can actually, before joining roundtables, you can listen to a conversation, and you can leave the roundtable before you actually sit at the table. And another thing is you can actually create your own if you don't like the topic, and invite people to your own roundtables. I thought it was pretty interesting. Okay,
yeah, virtual roundtables sound great.
Great. So with that, let's go ahead and go into our second segment of our presentation.
Hi, Bridget.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Bridget and I have worked together a couple of times, and Bridget heads up creative at Prudential.
Thank you. Yes, and let me just share my screen here. So thank you for having me. Excited to talk about that. I saw a lot of really interesting questions popping up on the Q&A, and I hope that some of them very similar to the work that we do at Prudential. So I'm really hoping that you can get some of those good answers here. So I just want to start out a little bit about who we are at Prudential. So I run the creative for the US businesses. And there's many businesses within the one group of Prudential, right? So our team is about 78 creatives, and that services over 250 marketing strategists, right? So we deal with a lot in that space. And so we're a high performing team with world-class talent, as we like to say. And we really carry the responsibility of making Prudential the most culturally relevant financial services brand in the world, which in 2020 became even harder to do with the new environment that we live in. So a little bit about the work that we do. So we're always working on harnessing power of storytelling. We're also trying to drive the considerations and solutions that Prudential provides. And we're also really creating experiences in the virtual and the physical world. And so through that, we have departments that, we work on editorial, we work on print advertising, we work on web and Pru.com, and we have a video team and things like that. So we service quite a bit in that space. And to be honest with you, through all the work that we do, and I have to tell you, we did about 14,000 projects last year alone. We believe that the idea needs that execution to really make the impact, right? So every good idea becomes amazing when it's applied the right way. And a little shout out to Zarina for talking about working with your creative partners the right way. We can always bring a lot to the table, and when you work together, it becomes really powerful. So it is really a love story between us and Ceros, because I think they came to us at a time right before we knew that we would be in this kind of situation of needing to change everything. And so, we kind of bumped into them. I didn't bump into them. I walked into their booth at the Adobe Summit in 2019. And where we really started off was at that point, we were doing a ton of expos. So virtual booths and things of that nature. And we were working on engaging people, and we were engaging. And when I say people, I mean, we're our end employees. So large companies, right? And then their employees, and then also advisors and brokers and financial professionals, right? A lot of serious content, really heavy, between life insurance, things like accidental death and dismemberment, things you can't be too fun about. But then also talking about your retirement and annuities and saving for your long time financial wellness, right? So we were able to find really good space in creating with Ceros these experiences that whether a note to myself, or we're asking people to make commitments to really take care of their finances, or our outcomes wall, which really showed our value prop and who we were. And so for this was a producer's piece where someone could dive into who we are and what we're doing, our purpose driven. And so we started experimenting with Ceros in different ways. One of the other fun things we did originally was a holiday card, trying to get people excited about who we are and thank them for what we were doing. And so what we developed here was, these are our senior leaders. We had them give us their favorite holiday song, which we then applied onto this site that we send out through email, just thanking them, pulling together the holiday list. And then from there, we had a playlist on the end. Now, why this is so important is because obviously there's a web team, but they are super busy, right? So we had to figure out other ways of creating content and experiences ourselves. So Ceros was a really great tool for us to be able to create content that otherwise would have needed back-end coding. So this made us faster to market. We were able to save resources and be really efficient. So then the pandemic hit, and we needed to survive, but even more than that, we needed to thrive. And so I think everything in our world changed, right? The end user changed. We changed how we work. It changed how our products were sold. It changed the people that were selling our products. Everything was changing really rapidly, and we had to change seamlessly because we needed to continue on and make sure that we were paying life claims or helping people work on their finances or doing their budgets and things like that. We need to do that seamlessly without a bump. So we had to transition in everything we do. So we went through this full digital transformation and found the right tools. So it was a mix between, several tools, Ceros being at the core at that. And then as we worked through, we realized, okay, we needed to transform, but not just take a printed piece and make it an interactive PDF. It had to be way more than that, right? It had to become something far more engaging because it's no longer a transactional thing. It is an engagement thing. People are sitting at home in front of their computers, and they want to be entertained. They want to take their information in differently. So there was no excuses anymore for clunky experiences. So there's several use cases that we've come through Prudential, and I'm going to show you a couple of them, but new ones develop every single day. One of the main ones and one of the obvious ones is the print to digital. So what you're seeing on screen here is actually something that was an enrollment journey. Now, very typically before, this was like an 11 by 14 piece, and we laminated it. And when we would go into a sales meeting with 5 or 10 sales clients sitting at a table, we would hand these to them, and we'd walk through the journey with them on that piece. And again, it was laminated, so I'm pretty sure they ate lunch on it too. And then obviously there's no more in-person meetings. And guess what? I don't think there will be going on. There might be a few, but it's going to be few and far between. So we created this really beautiful experience. Again, this was done with the design team and not having to use our web resources. And what we have now is a much more elegant way of showcasing the journey and our tools and showing how it comes off as much more tech forward, and it allows people to do demos and dive into things. And so it's no more of that kind of moving from different experiences. Everything lives right within here. And so this is a piece now that gets used on the regular. We have many journeys that we've created for clients to showcase how we work in this space. And it gets really great results, and they respond to it really well. And the best part of this is that when we walk away from the meeting, they can keep this, right? And not the printed piece they're going to throw somewhere else. it's the link that they're going to go engage on. And then we get analytics from that. So we can see where they're spending their time, what pieces are they engaging with. And so it's endless amount of information for us, because as creatives, like, we're data heads too, right? So the more that you can dig into creative and see what's working, the more I can dive into this Ceros piece and say, okay, they spent time here, they didn't here. They're downloading this marketing piece, but they're not downloading this. Let me try to move it to a different section of the experience, and maybe they'll use it more. And then if they don't, you realize maybe there's something wrong with that core marketing piece, or perhaps we're not even need to use it anymore. So one of the other great cases is experiential, right? We were doing tons of expos. I showed you some of the in-person stuff a little earlier. And we needed to transform into that virtual conference space, that virtual event space. And so, you know, very much, I've had really good discussions with Zarina Stanik already about events. Like, it's a tough space, and you've seen it out there. So we decided to create some own virtual booths, and do it with some really engaging bite-sized snackable content. Again, using audio and video to tell a story, and eventually, you know, find the right amount of action and engagement to really meet people where they are and see information the way they want to. So here's something from a conference. So you can see here, let me demo this.
Welcome to Ignite 2021 and to our virtual marketing booth.
So again, using the power of story behind, and I love a good audio piece on these experiences. It's great. A little more.
From client identification, we move to the point of sale.
So we actually have a great different ways of engaging people that really, along with tools and interactive tools and calculators and things of that nature, that keep them exciting and then come back to use them over and over again. So it's great to kind of play in this space and work in these different spaces. And the beauty of is that you can hide things and do things in different ways, right? So for some, and I'm going to take a step back on that, but for instance, there's some people that want to do a deep dive, and there's some people that just want snackable content. You can give them both in these experiences, because the way that you think about formatting. And so here's an instance. It's like, I want to learn a little more. So if I click on here, I can learn more in that instance. And then fun, engaging little things like, for instance, here we have a take a pen. Just something silly and something fun that kind of gets people like, oh, that's cute, right? And so I think this is a really important kind of pivot on how we used to work. Nothing is just a flyer or a communication. It is now an engagement, and you have to think that way. You have to think about how someone is going to take this content in and how it's going to come through. It is not the same that it used to be. And this is even more true for the fact that I also have been a professor for about 18 years, and clearly my classroom has changed, right? So so I've had to take all of my content that was once these 100-page PowerPoint documents, and I was in person and I'm leaning over their shoulder and I'm helping them, to changing it into engaging content where I have them on Zoom and I need to keep their attention for 3 hours. So how do I keep them engaged? So I'm able to build things in on these sites along with my information. And I had to really rethink the amount of information I was giving them, and again, make it snackable. And I'm seeing really good results in that space. And I think the other really important thing, if you see there's an accessibility link down at the bottom of this one, is that for Prudential and myself, is that any content that we create is completely accessible by all. So we try to make everything ADA, so American Disabilities Act, so that everybody can view it. And so we've really built that in our platform and kept that in the front of our mind, whether it's leaving a button so we can stop movement for somebody, or we have a link out, or all the pictures have content where you can read in the background. That's very important to us. And so that's been a big part of what we're doing too. And the last thing I just want to push on too, is that don't ever stop growing from there. So there's some recent new updates on things that you could do. And I could click. What's really great is my team was like, hey, we can take interactive video and we can add dynamic objects on top of it. So now what we've done is, this is a holiday card that's on a site, and we've actually made it so it's a video animation happening underneath, but we're be able to create like a choose your own adventure style, right? So here it's like when you click, the video is underneath of it, we can do things like click to make snow, or click for a snowman to appear. And so this was a good test project for us because it was a lighthearted holiday card. But now we know it works and people are engaging with it and they like the idea that they can control kind of the fun things that they're seeing. And so now we're able to take that and push that further in our next project. And again, the whole time being really fast to market because we aren't having to do the back end coding here in this space. So I'm going to stop there and ask, that's pretty much my presentation. So I want to see if anybody had any questions.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Bridget. I love the idea of reimagining sponsor booth at the conferences. This is based on the feedback we've been getting from B2B marketers and field marketers has been the hardest challenge.
Absolutely.
And I'm glad that you're getting some success there. So before we get to Q&A, I wanted to give opportunity for everyone to submit their questions right now. And also, Bridget, if you can provide us with would be the best way to get in touch with you. We have a lot of, yeah,
I am
absolutely.
on LinkedIn, so that's good. And I'm happy also to lend out my email address too for connection there. But LinkedIn's the best. Very, very active on there. And so I can put that in the chat if you'd like. And thank you. And yes, I think the event space is tricky, right? So like we said, we went from doing 200 events, whether they were 3 people or they were 1,000 people, to having to figure out how to do it online. And it's tough, right? I mean, we've seen a lot of progress in the event space, and you see people constantly trying to figure it out. But we are having to take creative jumps on our own to create stuff. And there is like people walk away saying, "Oh, that was a really good experience," or "It doesn't look so great. I'm not going to engage with it." And I've seen this, and you know, we partner a lot with On24, and so we've been really trying to push that space too of how can we make our content better, more interactive, and things of that nature. And they've been great partners. So
Excellent.
yeah.
Yeah, so we have Thomas saying that he had 20 years plus of experience at Morgan Stanley, but the past 13 years he led a private equity firm. So he would like to connect. So
Yeah.
let's make sure we exchange the information here in the chat.
Mhm.
Let's talk a little bit about monetization, and maybe you can also talk about how you're thinking about ROI that you're receiving from content, because some of it could be purely a brand play, some of it could be more trackable. I know you briefly covered it in your presentation, some of the decisions that you make based on data. How marketers should be thinking about their content, monetizing their content in 2021?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. And you know, when it comes to where you're putting your content and what you're doing, you really have to focus on that target audience, right? And I think, you know, for us, we use so much of those analytics and we're able to pivot really fast now, right? So if we put something out there and, you know, we send out an email blast where we then have a Ceros site we've created with this dynamic content. We within the day will see action taken or not taken, right? So, and if the click-through rate is so good, but yet they're not engaging the pieces, we know that we need to change what we're showcasing in that space. And so a lot of that data helps us decide, okay, great, like, are we going to try down this road or not? And I think Zarina hit on it earlier in her presentation, but when you do find something that works, you need to keep hitting that button, right? But then also figure out like what's your next step, like what's your next leap. And I think, you know, with data and things, you can find out really quickly whether something is functioning for you correctly. And I think that's really important to us. And that's a lot of how we figure out return on investment, if it's worth it. And I know, I think in 2021, people are, and in the end of 2020, we had to take some risks with ROI just because it was a whole new environment and dynamic. And our target audiences that we thought we knew really well, right? Whether they were, you know, 50 plus or our 20 to 30, everything changed. And so there's just, I would just say, you know, a lot of trial and error, test and continue on. That's the best way to make those decisions.
Zarina, what is your take on monetization of content? And you're on mute right now.
Sorry about that. I think if you're using the data that you're able to get with either marketing automation platforms or forms, you can really track the ROI of your content a lot better. I do strongly believe in having a strong brand presence and brand awareness. I just don't think it's as easily trackable unless you're really in the nitty gritty with things like forms and your marketing automation platform.
Excellent. We have a lot of virtual event related questions, but I want to make sure that we also cover everything else related to the content. So how do you cope with time and resource limitations? I'm trying to clarify these questions. I guess you can use the software. That's one of the ways. Do you have any other thoughts?
I think there's a lot of softwares at a bunch of different price points that really can help you. You don't have to be an expert in everything. There's really a great wide variety of tools out there, video tools, content tools. There's even tools out there like Upwork and Fiverr where you can get some content help if you're a small company and you're not a pro at writing. There's a ton of resources out there. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and I think the large understanding we have like a large team, we have a ton of work. So for us, it's like, how do we get a tool and learn it really, really well so that when we're in that space, we're being as efficient as possible. And again, like with Ceros for us, that was a lifesaver because we did not need to engage a web coding team anymore. So again, made us faster to market. And we then throughout that, we created templates within there, right? So someone asked, I see on the chat, like what are you presenting in? I was presenting in Ceros. And so we try to create templates based on that. So one works and we know it works, right? Because we see the data, we then use that as a template and we use it over and over and over again, just switching out content so it becomes even faster and we can create quicker. So again, templatizing makes you more efficient too.
Got it. And Bridget, on that note, how does your content marketing team look like? Just curious.
Yeah, so we have the marketing strategist team, which are quite large, and then our content marketing team, which at Prudential is roughly new. I'd say we probably up 2-3 years at this point. And they're my besties, by the way, because where they really come through for us is they're able to see that kind of global story. And so where you might have tons of different products or you might have many different campaigns happening at once, they're there to help you create that one message and then make sure that it's consistent throughout and help you kind of weave the story through the whole piece and make sure it's consistent. And I know it works really well, especially when you have different groups or different products working on different things. They might not always be talking to each other about what is that end line that you're getting there. And so that content strategist plays that pivotal role. And then even like weaving, they call them the weavers, right? Like they weave the storyline through the social and things of that nature. So the content strategist group has been growing quite a bit at Prudential.
Yeah, I'm assuming so. Prudential is a fairly large company. But Zarina, a question for you: what is that minimum viable team that you need to start implementing on engaging content? How many team members? What is usually would be the company size when they should start thinking about it?
Yeah, I think anyone who has any sort of content calendar is probably ready for creating digital immersive content. And I break it down when you need 3 parties for this type of content. You need a marketer who knows the messaging, knows the copywriting. You need your design resources, like someone from Bridget's team. And then you also need to work hand in hand with your digital person because you can create this content and it can be amazing. But if it's not put out into the world in a thoughtful and planned way, then no one's really going to see it.
Yes.
Makes sense. All right, we have time for a few more questions. So if you have a question, add it to the chat. Let's see, we have another question from John. He's talking about COVID being on everyone's mind right now. So what is your recommendation? Is it at this point, do you suggest addressing it in your content or staying away from the topic and sort of focusing on that post-COVID era?
Yeah, we actually have this discussion daily. Like, when do we stop talking about it, right? When do we stop saying, we're working from home simultaneously, like, go us, right? When do we stop doing that? And I think there is some fatigue and we've really kind of drawn back. I think there's still the times when we do apply it is when it is like crucial to business, right? It's crucial to, you know, that you might, something can't happen because of this, or something will happen because of this. That is the time to talk about it. Other than that, we've kind of backed off from it. And I think that's a good approach, because people are getting fatigued from it. And now it's the normal, right? It's the normal to be digital and be online. It's the Zooms are normal now. It's kind of our environment, this spot. Zarina might have a different take on it, but
I fully agree. I think you just have to kind of tap into yourself as a human and what it's like to go through the day-to-day stuff. If there's something really like stressful going on in the world, I do think you sometimes have to address it, but also a lot of the time people are focusing on their work and coming to these events and online experiences to kind of take a break and not focus on everything that's going around in the world.
I agree. And let's wrap up with one virtual event question, and then at the end we'll finish up with some departing words and key takeaways related to engaging content. So, Bridget, you participated in many virtual events, and Zarina, you obviously you produced many of them and also participated. What is, in your opinion, the optimal length of the time that live virtual event should run, and how do you see maybe this concept evolved most recently?
Okay, I'll go first. I think it depends on what it is. If it's something like a webinar, then I think the optimal time is probably anywhere between 30 minutes to an hour. If it's something that's like a company event where you're doing sessions and networking breaks and things like that, we've had a lot of success by breaking it down into 2 or 3 days and having each day be a 2 or 2.5 hour session, and then also having themes in around those days. So if you're someone who is interested in creative sessions, then you know that the bulk of your content is going to be on day 1 and day 3. If you're marketing, then the bulk of your content is going to be day 1 and day 2. And it just kind of helps you commit time to the event and not really taking over your whole entire 9 to 5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with Zarina. We're saying that same element in that same area. And the one thing though that I think we found people, it was by fluke, but we found people really liked it, is that we also record and then play the talent on demand throughout that time. So you might not want your content to be out there forever, right? Especially if it might be a sales or sales conference or something. But things happen to people during the day. I have 2 kids, and numerous times they've walked in the worst time ever, right? So by recording, having that content kind of play and record on the webinar throughout the 24 hours, like, so if it's not in that time, people can go back and catch up on stuff that they might have missed. And I think that was something that happened, kind of as a fluke in the beginning, but now it's become best practice. And then it stops the end of the conference as well, but at least you can catch up on things that you might have missed in between there.
Makes sense. And what I've been seeing that usually the virtual events have become shorter and more impactful when it comes to actionable content or experiential content. Actually, it was interesting to observe some of the 15-minute keynotes at the virtual event, that when you get just straight to the point and people are getting this valuable nuggets of information. So, and I'm excited about how this space will evolve. So maybe we'll wrap up by sharing what are you seeing as trends when it comes to engaging content for 2021 currently. And it could be, we could talk a little bit about virtual events. We could talk about how it would change when things would go to somewhat normal. We know all of us agree that engaging content is here to stay, but what are some other trends that you're currently seeing?
I think it's really interesting with how AI will play into this. I think there's a whole world of opportunity to make really fun content that feels more personalized and is much more scalable.
Yeah, I was going to go in the same realm of personalization. Is at a whole nother level at this point and needs to be. People are demanding it, right? So that is going to be a trend that they want to be more personalized than ever. And then also, I think some of the content, people wanting stuff in more of the in 360 and in the virtual space as well. People are looking to that. I know. So as a finance company, we've done a couple virtual experiences that we've sent out that people are engaging with their Oculus and things of that nature too, because they're looking for that escape, right?
Yeah.
Yes, well, thank you so much, Bridget and Zarina, for joining us today. And thanks everyone for attending this webinar live. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to connect with our presenters. They will add their LinkedIns in the chat. And feel free to share your predictions and trends for where in event marketing and content marketing space, how it would evolve. I'm looking forward to seeing everyone at the future Traction Conference. Have a great day. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Bridget and Zarina, for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much.
I need some traction.